Hello and welcome to Talk Truth. My name is Corey Huntsberger. I've got my father, Alan Huntsberger, in the studio, and we're going to start off with our foundational verse because it's important and it's powerful. The earth and everything in it, the world and its inhabitants belong to the Lord. For he laid its foundation on the seas and established it on the rivers. Psalm 24, 1 and 2. Dad, why this verse? Why this verse? Year after year, why this verse?
Well, the beautiful thing is that, and we keep saying this, it's true, and it is, and it deepens in our hearts. And we're finding some things that are going on in our world today that this verse is becoming more and more alive. I've been doing a study in Peter, and Peter's been talking about, our salvation. And Peter takes us deeper into the mystery of salvation, reaching all the way back to eternity past. He says he was chosen, that's Jesus Christ, before the foundation of the world. The word chosen here comes from the Greek word to be foreknown or foreordained. And this tells us something astonishing. Before the first word of creation was spoken, Corey, before light pierced the darkness, before time began, Jesus was already the Lamb of God in the heart of the Father. Now, there was no divine reaction to the fall of man. Redemption through the blood of Christ was always the plan. And as Revelation 13:8 describes, he is the Lamb slain from the foundation of the world. So the cross of Christ was not plan B. It was always plan A, written in the eternal counsel of God's will. The earth and everything in it, the world and its inhabitants belong to the Lord. And we could go on to talk about the sovereignty of God and the free will of man. That'll be some other day. But, one of the things that's exciting is that nothing surprises God.
Yeah. Wow.
Nothing.
Look at you just dropping the wisdom right off the bat. I got to take time to think about that. My goodness. So good.
Yeah, you think about that.
Yeah, let's get on to our guest. We're excited to have him back. He is a regular and everyone loves him, Mr. Shawn Buckley. Shawn, welcome back to the show.
Oh, thanks for having me back. It's always an honor. Can I just comment, Alan, because that was really profound, what you said. And it also means then, because so many people feel that they're not on solid ground right now, like that the world is just going crazy and falling apart. And I think it's clear that God knew exactly what would be happening. And it's not like his plan has stopped and we're in this planless period. He's the earth and all that's in it, including at this time, belongs to the Lord.
Yes.
And the exciting thing about that, Shawn, and we discovered that, a while ago, is that when Christ was crucified, the disciples felt their world had collapsed. And of course, then finally in the book of Acts chapter 4, it states that Herod and Pontius Pilate and the Gentiles and the Jews all conspired together to kill the Lord. But what they were actually doing is they were doing the predestined plan of the Lord and fulfilling what God wanted them to do. And that was kill Christ so he could die, be buried for 3 days, and on the third day rise again. So the free will of man is actually working the sovereignty of God and not even knowing it.
Well, and I also, it's clear that he's written about our lives and that he has a plan for our lives. So each one of us has a destiny where he wants to use us as part of his plan. And completely. I think that, when you're not like a difficulty I have, if I start doing things I'm not supposed to be doing, I feel alienated from him. And that is a terrible feeling. And I think we're most unhappy when we're not actually pursuing our destiny, because he blesses us and we get to experience him in a way that we can only experience when he's showing us who he is through his plan. So,
yeah.
Amen.
Speaking of God's plan, you were doing something years ago, Shawn, that I've just become recently known because of you. Thank you so much. It's called the Charter of Health Freedom. This is the first time I ever heard it when you mentioned it, and I was like, Shawn, we have to talk about this. I don't know anything about it. Can you tell us, what is the Charter of Health Freedom? How did this start? Just go ahead and explain this to us, because I really loved what you were saying about it.
Well, and it's interesting because it's now just during this show, some things are occurring to me, because this happened back in 2008, and there were some things spoken over it at that time. And I think the time for the Charter of Health Freedom is now. And so what happened was I've been, fighting Health Canada on behalf of natural health products. Now I'm in my 31st year. And Health Canada will come up with initiatives, like I've been on your show talking about the self-care framework, and here's what they're planning on doing. This has been going on forever. And then groups will, organize and form and create, citizen resistance. And either Health Canada will back down for a while, or, we at least mitigate the damage. And that happened in a big way in 2008. And we had success in 2008, but everyone was just exhausted. So, we got together, retailers, consumers, manufacturers, natural practitioners, like the whole gambit. And we just recognized what's happening. Like, we're fighting this war of attrition, but we're slowly losing. And how do we solve this? Like, how do we actually just make sure that people have sovereignty over their own bodies, that they can choose to take natural things if they want? I mean, you don't have to, but how do we get out of this situation where Health Canada is methodically and deliberately trying to funnel us into a strictly or almost strictly chemical drug model? And the answer was, why don't we come up with basically a health bill of rights? And that's what the Charter of Health Freedom is. So the Charter of Health Freedom does many interesting things. And the first thing is it takes the health rights that the courts already say we have, such as, as individuals. And remember, this is pre-COVID, this is pre-vaccine, this is 2008. The courts were clear. We have sovereignty over our own bodies. We get to decide how, what treatments we want to take. And we also have the right to decide to refuse treatments. Wow, now that's pretty important today, more important than it was then, arguably, being over, what we've just gone through. So it codifies them into law and says this is absolute law, and this has precedence over every other act of Parliament. It also creates some legal presumptions that don't exist at law, but that are super important. The one that jumps out at me right now is it creates the legal presumption that the best source of information as to whether or not a treatment works for somebody is the person themselves. Like, it's common sense, but bad things happen in our medical system and at times in our legal system if somebody isn't competent. Courts don't assume, and doctors don't assume, that people actually are telling the truth when they say, oh no, this isn't working for me, or I'm having these side effects. To actually have sovereignty over our own bodies, we need it as a legal principle that, no, we're the best source of information as to whether or not a treatment is working or not working for us. And the Charter of Health Freedom also does something really unusual in Canadian health law, is it actually forces a balanced risk analysis. So what our problem right now is Health Canada is in a full-on risk model. So any hint of a risk, and they will pull a product off the market. Well, they have no idea how many doctors are managing patients with the product. And so they're basically interfering with health decisions without having any idea. They never look at, well, what's the consequence of restricting access or removing access? And the Charter of Health Freedom actually says, no, you can't remove a treatment. You can't restrict a treatment if that would actually cause more harm than leaving the treatment available and just managing the risk in other ways. So it should be common sense. It should be in all of our health legislation that you can only take the action that is the safest and going to have the best health outcomes. but it's not there. There's nowhere in our Food and Drug Act, our current health regulation scheme, that actually requires good health outcomes. So, and another thing that it does that is pretty exciting, and I think I've spoken about the TrueHope case on this show before, but for those of your guests that aren't aware of it, TrueHope had developed a product called Empower Plus that it turns out is very effective at treating bipolar disorder. And it came about because one of the founders' wife had committed suicide. She had bipolar, just like her father and just like her grandfather had committed suicide, suffering by bipolar. And two of his children were suffering terribly. So he had a daughter, Autumn, who lived in Edmonton. And she was one of those people that would be involuntarily committed to the psychiatric ward, about half of each year. So she'd become so manic and then so suicidal, like bipolar, you cycle back and forth, that she would be involuntarily committed. Well, then they put her on a drug cocktail that would so dope her out that it would take months and months and months and months and months for her body to acclimatize enough that she could be released from the hospital where she's not drooling over herself 24 hours a day. And even then it would be under 24-hour suicide watch. And then as the months go by, she acclimatizes more. So now her body's completely used to the drug cocktail and she's manic again and suicidal and now recommitted. And when you're in that cohort of people, like your lifespan isn't 5 years. I mean, that's probably generous. Well, these are the type of people that were using this product. And if it works, like you're completely normal, like you're back at work, you're back at school, so, well, Health Canada restricted access to that treatment. So they told the company, well, you stop selling it, and the company wouldn't. They said, are you crazy? We'll have people die. And like tons of doctors and psychiatrists communicated with Health Canada saying, no, people will die. Well, that didn't satisfy Health Canada. So they stopped shipments at the border. And a whole bunch of people died. I mean, during the trial, I called Ron Lajeunesse, who used to run all of the mental health services for the government of Alberta. And at the time, he was president of the Canadian Mental Health Association. He testified that every time there was a death, he would have a press conference to try and embarrass Health Canada to allow this product back. And eventually, Health Canada did. And the court found as a fact that Health Canada killed people. The court acquitted TrueHope, saying it was legally necessary for you to continue selling or more people would have died. Well, we just come out of that experience. What do you do? Whether it's a chemical drug or whether it's a natural health product, what do you do if the government takes that away? Even if you're rich and like you can spend all the money you want on lawyers, I can tell you with experience that the court system moves so slow that if you don't have a lot of time, likely, you're not going to get recourse, and the Department of Justice will be full on there with unlimited resources actually arguing that, oh yeah, he's lying. You're not going to die if you don't get access to this drug. It's just crazy. And most of us don't even have the resources, even if the court systems would work, to be able to go to court and plead for our lives for access to a drug. So the Charter of Health Freedom creates the Health Freedom Ombudsman as basically a free way to have, our need for drugs, our need on health issues where the government is interfering, dealt with in a quick and inexpensive way for people. So the Charter of Health Freedom, I think, is an absolutely blessed document that is the solution for today.
Shawn, why would Health Canada do that? In the court case, did it ever come out that they had to give the why? Did they ever say why they're pulling this off or why they're stopping the shipments from coming across the border? I mean, to me, I want to know why. What was their reasoning?
So let me share with you two things that happened during that trial that I think might answer that question. And first of all, understand is Health Canada is not under a legal obligation to protect your health. Health Canada is not under a legal obligation to protect your very life. Health Canada is there to enforce the Food and Drug Act. And I learned that during this trial as there was a Health Canada inspector on the stand. And as a lawyer, I had this whole list of questions that I was expecting to get yeses from to box this witness in. And then, I had some closing questions to get what I wanted. And one of these questions that I asked this witness, because I didn't understand what I just told you yet, was, something like, well, as a Health Canada inspector, you're there to protect our health. And I'm expecting a yes, because I didn't understand yet. And she won't give me a yes. And I'm sure the answer is yes, so I keep trying. But she's under oath, and she's being truthful under oath. And she sets me straight. This was a learning experience for me. This is one of those, you get spanked, you don't know what's going on, and you get woken up. And she explained quite clearly to me under oath, no, Health Canada is not there to get good health outcomes. Health Canada is there to enforce the Food and Drug Act and regulations. Now that I understand that, I see what she was saying with crystal clarity. Now let me share you something chilling. Same trial, different inspector, because Health Canada had so much evidence that they were killing people. I mean, I already told you about Ron Lajeunesse, that he would hold a press conference. President of the Canadian Mental Health Association would hold a press conference every time there was a death he was aware of to try and embarrass Health Canada into relenting and allowing access to this product. And there were like thousands and thousands of documented pages in Health Canada's possession where psychiatrists and doctors and individuals are communicating, this is life and death, you have to let me have this product. And it's just vitamins and minerals. Like right now, you can buy it in a health food store, it's licensed as a vitamin and mineral supplement, same product. It's just a whole bunch of psychiatrists use it to manage serious mental health conditions. But here's the scary part. So there's this Health Canada inspector on the stand. If I remember correctly, his name was Miles Brousseau. And if I remember correctly, I've introduced some documents showing like Health Canada is aware that they're causing death and harm. And I asked him a question, something to the effect of, so if you were given a document showing that your enforcement actions was causing harm, would you continue? And I don't remember if I had said death or not, but, at the very least causing harm to people. Like, would you continue? And I think it did say life, because he said, yes, I would continue. And the courtroom it's almost like time stopped. You could hear a pin drop. Everyone even stopped breathing, literally, because they couldn't believe what they just heard. But what I've come to understand is if you give people power and you give them directions, they will do things. Who was the head of the SS? Was it Himmler?
I'm not sure.
Let's say it was Himmler, but whoever it was, there's a famous speech, and I think it's before the night of the long knife. So they're sending a whole bunch of people out to murder a bunch of other people. And he understood that if you take responsibility away from people, that they will do terrible things for you. So he actually says in that speech, it's not you firing the gun, it's me firing the gun. So he was taking the responsibility for what he was asking them to do. And it's a problem when you give the Minister of Health and high-ups all this authority, then they direct their soldiers to go and do things. People will actually hurt other people if they're following orders, if they don't have the responsibility. And that's why during the Nuremberg trials, we had to establish this principle that you can't absolve yourself of liability by following orders. And I don't think we've gone far enough. Like we've learned during this COVID thing, so many people were falling in line by following orders. I think going forward as a legal principle, that likely we have to make it just to protect ourselves that your penalty is double if you're following orders, so that we get ingrained into our system, our minds that we have to take personal responsibility, and we can't, we're in more jeopardy when we're following orders.
Wow. So Shawn, is that still in existence today, that if you, that Health Canada, even if, they're proven that something doesn't work, are they under the administration? Like, are they under the Prime Minister, and that's who they're responsible to? Or are they a private organization like the College of Physicians and Surgeons?
No, Health Canada is a department that takes directions from the Minister of Health. So it's a true government department. I can't tell you whether it's incorporated or not for financial reasons, but they take directions from the Minister of Health. And, the Minister of Health now has so much power that really we've moved out of a parliamentary system and into tyranny. And when I say tyranny, some of the viewers might go, oh, that's a harsh word. What's he talking about? Well, look up the word tyranny in the dictionary. All tyranny means is absolute discretion. So when somebody has absolute discretion over something, we call that tyranny. It's a negative word that we react to just because we've learned that if somebody has absolute discretion, bad things happen. That's why we have to have all these checks and balances. But in the last several federal budgets, of all things, there's been changes to the Food and Drug Act that give the Minister of Health just incredible authority with, really no tests to do it. And that one bill that died in Parliament that was going to basically, force us to find alternative sources of protein and basically align us with the World Health, One Health initiative, both over humans and over animals, gave the Minister of Health basically absolute jurisdiction over our livestock, which is interesting. So we really need to watch our laws. We're moving into a place, like we've spent about 30 years moving out of common law into a civil law system without telling anyone. And now we're moving away from Parliament having jurisdiction to giving a small number of ministers almost absolute control over every aspect of our life.
Yeah. Shawn, where can we find this Charter of Health Freedom? Can we download it? Can we read it? I want to know more about it because I think it's going to start coming into play here in the future. I'm not too sure. I don't want to say too much, but where can we find it so we can start learning a little bit about it?
Well, I appreciate the question because I actually, think it's very important for people to learn about this and get behind this. So if you just Google Charter of Health Freedom, it has its own website. So it's charterofhealthfreedom.org. And, there's videos there to explain it. But best of all is you can download a copy. So there's an English copy, a PDF. There's a French PDF. And you can also download, it's a paper petition calling on Parliament to enact the charter. And it's just because back then we didn't have electronic. So print off that petition and get it filled out and signed. If you don't get the whole sheet filled out, it doesn't matter. There's an address there. Send it to us. We're the third largest petition now in Canadian history. And we're going to enter that petition this fall. We want to get as many signatures as possible.
Wow. Well, we know health's important, and I'm glad you had that trial. I'm glad you heard what you heard, because that's how we learn things. That's what's great about all the trials we're going through now. Everyone says to us, not everyone. There are a few people that are like, why are you still talking about COVID? Why are you still talking about this? It's because we're going through the trial process now. And in this process, we're learning so much that we never knew before. We don't have rights and freedoms like we thought we did. And we don't understand how the system works and how corrupt some of it is, and how the back and forth and who they choose to target and who they don't target. So it's eye-opening. I'm glad you got that eye-opener back then. Hopefully that helps us in the future so that we can have some freedoms for our health. I mean, that shouldn't be too complicated, right?
It's amazing we have to talk about it, isn't it?
Mind-boggling. It really is. When I thought I was going to be an adult growing up, I never thought I'd have to talk about this. I thought you could just do anything with your health. Go get exercise, go get supplements, take care of your health. It's your responsibility. But in the world today we live in, it's bizarro world is what I like to say. Anyway, Shawn, we really appreciate you being on the show. Thanks for being here. We'll definitely have you back.
Oh, thanks for having me, and God bless.
Well, it's always great having Shawn back. Charter of Health Freedom, Dad. More than ever, we know we need freedom in our health. You and I know that the most because we hear all the shenanigans going on every single day.
Yeah, and of course, it doesn't matter, to me what the government says. I'm still going to exercise my freedom over my body, and I don't care what the government says. They say, "Well, you can't travel, or you can't do this, or you can't do that." Fine. Right? Whatever you want to do, I'm going to do what I'm going to do with my body. Right now, if you want to put a gun to my head and take care of me, that's fine. I'm just going to glory land, and no problem. That. For me to live is Christ and to die is gain. All the better. But, that to me, we as God's people got to get to the place where we're not controlled by fear. Like I could give, anyway.
Slaves. We're slaves to fear.
We are.
We're going to be talking about slavery coming up in the future because Alan and I, we had the discussion before the show with Shawn, and Lord's really kind of like moving and showing us some things, really, because he's fine tuning us. And that's why we got to get this booklet, The Living Stone, A Journey of Transformation. That's what we need. Transformation, renewing of the minds, a different way of thinking. It's yours absolutely free. Go to our website, gotalktruth.com, click on resources, fill out the form. We'll send one to you in the mail. Supplies are almost totally gone. This booklet will go away here shortly, but it's very important to get into this booklet, do the reflection questions, and do a soul search because God's raising us up to a whole nother standard in the future coming up, and we have to meet that standard, right, Dad?
Amen.
If you want to help support our mission, keep this truth on the air, we are viewer supported. You can go to our website, gotalktruth.com, click on donate. Many different ways you can give digitally that way. If you'd like to do it through the mail, you can. You can make your gift payable to Heritage Christian Ministries Association and send it to 246 Stewart Green Southwest, Suite 3260, Calgary, Alberta, T3H 3C8. And if you'd like prayer, you can call our toll-free line and get prayer 24/7. 1-800-915-0056 is the number you'd call. All right, Dad, we're out of time. We'll see you guys later.
Love you.